This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Officials in China say many people are now recovering from coronavirus infections. The UN warns swarms of locusts could lead to a widespread food production crisis in East Africa. And how an Egyptian architect is drawing artistic inspiration from his country's ancient civilization. Hello and a very warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. And with me is Uche Okoronkwo with a preview of your business news.
Thanks, Lindy. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live Biz. Zimbabwe's diamond mining firm fails to meet its 2019 production targets. And European shares recover from the worst week in nearly 7 months. Of course, all that coming up within the program. For now, back to you, Lindy.
Thanks, Uche. In our top story, the death toll from the coronavirus in China continues to grow. It now stands at over 360. But officials say many people are recovering. Almost 550 people have overcome their symptoms. China has recorded more than 17,000 cases of the virus and nearly 150,000 others are under observation. There are 153 cases outside China. And this weekend, the Philippines reported the first death outside China, a Chinese national from Wuhan. Now, Chinese scientists have identified a possible new way for the virus to be submitted, and that's by human feces. Genetic traces of the coronavirus were found in patients' stools. Doctors had thought the virus was spread only through human contact or respiratory droplets, like from sneezing or coughing.
Although we found viral nucleic acids in some of the patient's feces, there is no evidence that it contains viruses so far, and it needs further observation. Till now, there is no confirmed case that has been infected in this way.
Meanwhile, coronavirus patients are being moved to Wuhan's newest hospital. After working round the clock for 9 days, construction has finished on Shanshan. Several ambulances are carrying a first batch of 50 patients to the new hospital. Our reporter Tang Bo rode with some paramedics.
Now, we have with us right now in the ambulance, in the van, Dr. Jin from Wuhan's Emergency Medical Center. And she is going to help with transporting those infected patients from the center hospital of Wuhan to Shanshan Hospital. And she is one of those who have been having a very close contact with those mildly and severely infected patients. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. The very first question is that I noticed that you have been one of the oldest working staff from the emergency center who has been working on the front line of combating the epidemic. So what has made you decided to do it, to continue to work on it?
After the epidemic broke out in Wuhan, me as a doctor, I wasn't thinking about my age, whether I'm old or not. It's rather my responsibility.
Of these two new facilities help relieve the burden of the current 23 designated hospitals in the city. And what does she feel about it?
After the breakout, measures have been taken, including the construction of the Shanshan and Shanshan Hospital. I think they certainly will ease the current situation, which provide more facilities for patients in need, and they will receive good treatment.
So right now, the hospital of Shanshan Hospital has been taken over by the People's Liberation Army on Sunday morning. Currently, 1,400 military medical personnel has been evaluating the environment of the hospital, their working environment and treating environment. And they are trying to figure out, have a very thorough understanding of the facilities of the hospital, so that to figure out when and how they're going to transport those 50 patients from different hospitals across the city to Huashinshan Hospital.
Well, China is getting international support to tackle the coronavirus outbreak. From South Africa, a consignment of face masks will be flown to the city of Wuhan, where they are urgently needed. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
The deadly coronavirus is spreading fast. Over 360 people have died, surpassing the number of deaths caused by severe acute respiratory syndrome in 2003. Global aid and medical supplies have been pouring into China. South African company UMask is also lending a hand with a donation of 30,000 protective masks.
The pandemic started in China, it's most severe in China. The rest of the world, it's still at beginning phases, but the Chinese, they're fighting this virus head on. It's not just a fight for China, it's not just a fight for Asia. And we need to make sure that this virus doesn't make its way to Africa. And this is our way of helping.
We also believe that it is time for us as an African business to step up and assist China, whereby it is always Africa that is receiving aid. It is now our time to offer aid to China.
The consignment was handed over to China's ambassador to South Africa. It will be flown free by Air China in the coming days to Wuhan, the epicenter of the outbreak.
We'd like to take this opportunity to express our sincere and heartfelt thanks to the South African government and people. You see, this kind is not only the very sympathy or the donation, but the significance and the importance of this kind of gesture, it goes far beyond itself. So it shows our solidarity to work together to fight against these global challenges to us. So we are very encouraged, we are very in touch.
China. This is a very good example of South-South collaboration, where two countries which were historically developing countries can now help each other with high-end products. I visited the factory just now, and it's clear that these products that are manufactured here are of very high quality. So we are very encouraged by this example of South-South collaboration, when the world actually needs examples of multilateralism.
The coronavirus has spread across China's borders to more than 15 countries as far as Australia, Canada and the United States. But there's a glimmer of hope. Close to 500 Chinese people have been treated and cured, and the virus has not yet made its way to Africa. Julie Shire, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
And indeed, other countries across Africa are also showing their support to China as it deals with the coronavirus outbreak. Among them is Egypt, whose president has voiced his confidence in China's capabilities to handle the outbreak. CGTN's Adel El-Makhroui has more.
Egypt is voicing great confidence in China's capability to deal with the new coronavirus outbreak. On Sunday, Cairo sent a flight containing 10 tons of medical supplies and equipment necessary to support China. The Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has also sent a letter to Chinese President Xi Jinping showing keenness to assist by all possible means.
I thank the President, government and people of Egypt for their support to China's efforts to combat the new coronavirus. Egypt has confirmed its continuous support to China to contain and control the virus spread. Egypt showed its confidence that China is capable to overcome this challenge. So I am thankful to all our Egyptian friends who are showing us this support.
Cairo's strong sentiments of solidarity isn't surprising. Together, the two presidents have upgraded their bilateral ties to comprehensive strategic partnership. To Egypt, helping out in the outbreak is the least it can do.
Egypt takes responsibility in supporting humanitarian crises in general. It is not the first time that Cairo has stepped forward to assist in such crises. China is special. It is considered a dear friend to Egypt, and the two countries have exceptional ties.
Egypt says it has sufficient reserve of the required preventive medical items and equipment to face the virus.
China is one of Egypt's biggest business partners and a promising exporter to tourism. The virus outbreak had an impact on the strength of these ties. With its assistance, Egypt is not only supporting a friend, it's also helping out to lift a crisis that is affecting its economy. Adel El-Makhroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Meanwhile, in Kenya, members of the Hebei and Chinese Chamber of Commerce rallied together to send much-needed supplies to Wuhan and other Chinese cities. The businessmen used their combined experience to organize the delivery of these supplies. In addition to sending goods to China, they also donated face masks and goggles to Kenya Airways. And CGTN was on hand to document their efforts.
My name is Jie Li. We have two businesses here. One it is a restaurant, and the other one we are doing construction chemicals. As a member of Hebei Chamber of Commerce, we are trying to locate and purchase and ship the medical items, facial masks, back to China. We are going to the manufacturer to take the goggles with this kind of N95 mask to Southern Airlines, China. And then after that, we are going to donate these boxes to Kenya Airways, the staff here in Kenya and in Guangzhou, China. So if the quantity is confirmed, I will let you know. No matter how many balance left, because some people go and rush to buy. Yeah, yeah. With your help, I think we can conquer the virus easily. To save someone. Yeah.
Oh, hey. Hi. Hello.
How are you?
Hello. From Mr. Lee from China.
Hebei Chamber of Commerce. So we know that your shortage of the facial mask.
Thank you, customer.
We have prepared 25 goggles and plus 3,000 pieces of the surgical facial mask. Yeah. I think it is our responsibility because we have been working here, live here for more than 10 years. And Kenya Airways is the entrance for the country of Kenya. So if we cannot keep them safe, and how can they welcome their more guests safely getting into this country? So their safety is our concern. There are other organizations who has organized the materials back to China, like Mr. He and Mr. Zhuo Wu, representing China Commercial Chamber of Commerce.
Today, we are come to send some medical supplies to China because of coronavirus breaks in China. That's why we want to send some very urgently these medical supplies to China. We are sending to China because of these days China is a public holiday and no factory is working. That's why the stock is not enough. And especially for this coronavirus after breaks, and most of hospitals, they don't have enough stock. That's why we buy from Kenya market and we send to there.
我现在主要是在这边现场哈，咱们的这个货运现场来解决这个目前的整个订餐，包括今天能够今天的一个装货的一个整个情况哈，来保障我们今天的这个捐赠的医疗物资运往武汉的这个整个地面服务的整个过程啊。
Well, those medical supplies sent by the Kenya Chinese Chamber of Commerce have arrived safely in Wuhan. It took only a day for the supplies to arrive at two of the main hospitals treating the coronavirus patients. Jiangxi Hospital received 3,600 N95 masks, as well as 40,000 disposable surgical masks. Meanwhile, over 149,000 disposable masks and other supplies made their way to Dongxihu Hospital. More deliveries are on their way, including another batch of supplies. When this plane's cargo space reached its full capacity, the airline crew decided to give the supplies an upgrade, with the boxes flying instead of passengers. Well, time now for a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. Security concerns rise in the Sahel region after another suspected jihadist attack in Burkina Faso. And the UN warns that swarms of locusts could lead to a widespread food production crisis in Eastern Africa.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo,
who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice. Tunisian President Kais Saied has made his first state visit abroad to Algeria at the invitation of his Algerian counterpart Abdelmajid Tebboune. CGTN's Adnan Chouachi has more.
The Tunisian head of state was greeted upon arrival at Houari Boumediene International Airport by the Algerian president and several ministers and senior officials. Kais Saied commended bilateral cooperation between Tunis and Algiers.
I am confident after this meeting, Tunisia and Algeria will share the same views and a total agreement on the bilateral, regional and international issues. We are two brotherly countries and our views are complementary and do not diverge.
The Algerian president said the two sides agreed to reject any foreign interference in Libya and prevent the flow of arms to this neighboring country.
We intend to restart helping the Libyans to find a solution by bringing together the various Libyan forces and building new institutions for the Libyan democratic state that will prepare for elections in that country, provided this will be accepted by foreign sides, including the United Nations and the Europeans.
Tebboune stressed the need to boost the strategic and security coordination between the two North African countries.
We need to fight terrorism in the two countries and across the borders. Tunisia's and Algeria's security and stability are interdependent.
The Algerian head of state said that his country will give Tunisia $150 million as deposit in the Central Bank of Tunisia, adding the deposit is meant to cement bilateral relations and helping Tunisia, which is facing financial difficulties. Abdelmajid Tebboune said Algeria will continue supplying Tunisia with natural gas and fuel until it could fulfill its commitments. The two presidents stressed the need to create the Grand Arab Maghreb and boost joint action. Adnan Chouachi, CGTN, Tunis.
Across East Africa, the desert locust invasion continues to wreak havoc on farmland and grassland. The UN Food and Agriculture Organization says these swarms could soon threaten widespread food production. Authorities are responding with aerial spraying of pesticides, but experts say the scale of the infestation is beyond local capacity. The locust swarms are still moving into new areas and can travel up to 150 kilometers a day. They also multiply at terrifying speeds. The locusts, first sighted in Somalia in December, have since spread to Kenya and Ethiopia. The FAO on Monday said swarms are now within 200 kilometers of Uganda and South Sudan. Meanwhile, Somalia has declared the invasion a national disaster.
We are in a region where over 11 million people in the three countries
are already in acute food insecurity. Therefore, we need to make all possible effort to avoid such a deterioration.
For now, Kenya, Somalia, and Ethiopia have been the main countries that have been infested by desert locusts in billions. But then there are also other countries at risk, especially South Sudan, Uganda, Eritrea, which is also infested so far.
Somalia has declared a national emergency following a massive locust infestation in most parts of the country, the worst to hit the Horn of African nation in quarter a century. Experts say a large swarm of desert locust has in recent months consumed huge amounts of crops, placing people and livestock at great risk. Mogadishu says it is not prepared to handle the locust invasion that is expected to worsen, especially during the upcoming harvest season.
The locust invasion hit us by surprise. For close to 3 decades, Somalia never saw such an infestation. The government does not have the capacity to contain the invasion. Most of our locust control centers were destroyed during the war. The latest invasion is worrying because we fear it might return during the harvest season.
Speaking in Mogadishu during a launch of a food security and nutrition analysis unit in Somalia, experts say that millions of dollars is needed to tackle the infestation in East Africa.
The appeal that the FAO has launched globally, but for the 3 countries that for now have witnessed locust infestation, which are Somalia, Kenya, and Ethiopia, is up to $76 million US. This figure is likely to increase as the movement of the locust and the projections evolve rapidly.
Recent estimates put the number of humanitarian cases to 4.1 million people, with quarter the number in dire need of urgent humanitarian assistance. Locust invasion has affected farmers in central Somalia and pastoralists towards the north. The government and its donors are now concerned of a new invasion in the coming weeks.
The infestation is widespread and it could cause significant damage potentially for the coming GU harvest, also the pasture in pastoral areas, as well as the dairy season towards the end of the year. So it is a significant risk that needs to be addressed through continued close monitoring of the situation, as well as urgent scaling up of control measures.
Authorities say the desert locusts originating from the Red Sea flocked into East Africa after ideal conditions were created following a recent successful rainy season in all 3 countries. Analysts have expressed concerns about the government's ability to tackle the locust menace. Meanwhile, the infestation is expected to hit the country again in April as farmers prepare to harvest their crops. Abdul Aziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
And to Burkina Faso now, where a suspected jihadist attack has left at least 20 civilians dead in the northwestern village of Bani in Seno province. This, according to local authorities. The attack comes after militants reportedly warned locals to leave the area. Many have been forced to flee their homes due to fear of further retaliatory attacks. Now, this latest attack follows a similar one, which left at least 39 people dead, and that was just less than a fortnight ago. Burkina Faso is among the Sahel nations that are struggling to contain a wave of jihadist attacks. Well, let's bring you an update on the situation now. We're joined on the line by CGTN's Penina Karibe. She's with us on the line from Ouagadougou. Penina, yet another daring attack in Burkina Faso. What can you tell us about this latest incident, and has calm been restored to Seno province?
Well, Lindy, we are actually in Dori town. That is actually just 30 kilometers from Bani, where that attack happened yesterday. It left, like you mentioned, at least 20 people dead. And again, like you mentioned there in your intro, Lindy, we understand from locals here that there had been warnings days before that attack. The militants had gone there warning people to take off, and that if they don't do so, then they would attack that area. And they actually did that. Now, what we're understanding from the locals, because we spent the day here in Dori, Lindy, that is actually in the Sahel region, just right on the border with Mali. And this is one of those places or regions in Burkina Faso that has been very prone to these attacks. And so the locals have been talking to us about how they happened. There's been forceful conscription of children by these jihadists, and that also abduction of women and girls. And so they're saying a lot of them have been forced to flee their homes. Those that don't flee are usually the handicapped or the elderly that end up getting killed. Now, today it's been quite peaceful. We made our trip to Dori from Ouagadougou, and there was such a huge and heavy security presence. Now, we talked to the locals to find out who are these security forces. Is it just the military, or is it the Sahel, the G5 regional troop force? And they said it is both combined. So they're saying they can't really say if calm has been restored, because those cases after such attacks, the jihadists retreat, there's a semblance of normalcy, and then a few days later, another attack happens, Lindy.
And we know, of course, Penina, that Burkina Faso is no stranger to attacks of this nature. How are authorities responding to the broader security threat?
Well, you know, Lindy, just to paint you a picture, I first came to Burkina Faso in 2018. And there was such a carefree feel to the country in the city, in the capital city, Ouagadougou, and as well any other places that you visited. But today, just driving out of Ouagadougou, coming to Dori, I mean, you can just see the turnaround, the difference just within those 2 years. There's now a very heavy security presence in every almost 10 kilometers or so. There was a roadblock. You would see all these public service vehicles, people getting outside of the vehicles. This heavy military presence. They would ask for identity cards, even of the locals. And this is both way, going into Ouagadougou and as well coming into this region. And so there's that sharp contrast that lets you know it's not business as usual in this country, Lindy. As well, when you walk in the town, especially like here, Dori, in every hotel you walk into, and this is something I didn't see back in 2018, there's a thorough search of your luggage, of yourself. You have to identify yourself. So, you know, you can see the government trying and at least making some effort to try and rein in these attacks in the country, Lindy.
Thank you so much for that update. Penina Kariba joining us there live on the line from Burkina Faso. Now let's turn to some disturbing developments coming out of here in Kenya. At least 13 pupils are feared to have been killed during a stampede in their school in Western Kenya. The exact cause of the stampede is yet to be established, but initial reports suggest the children were leaving for home at the time of the incident. Another 39 pupils from Kakamega Primary School were injured and rushed to hospital. We'll bring you more on that story as more updates come in. But for now, let's turn to Nigeria. The country has one of the highest rates of out-of-school children globally. UNICEF says that about 4 out of 10 primary school children are not accessing basic education. CGTN's Deji Badmus reports on the situation at one school on the outskirts of the capital, Abuja.
If you're looking for one community that clearly typifies the education challenge rural communities in Nigeria are battling with, it's this one. It's difficult to believe this is part of the country's federal capital territory. But Kaida community in the outskirts of Abuja actually is. And it's a vivid demonstration of why children in rural communities make up the bulk of the estimated 13 million out-of-school children in Nigeria. This is the only school in the entire community. It's an elementary school built by a missionary, and all 120 pupils that attend the school use this makeshift structure for their classroom. With no support in terms of funding, the missionary has not been able to develop the school beyond this stage since it started 6 years ago. But the very poor state of the school has not in any way dampened the spirit of the pupils and their 4 teachers, some of whom walk over 10 kilometers every day to get to school.
We need classes. We need chairs. We need more teachers. And if they can help those, there are orphans in these children in this school.
It's through the assistance of people like Anne Ogozi, a humanitarian, that the school is able to manage to keep going. She comes here once in a while to distribute supplies like books and medicine.
Apart from the education that is lacking here, the medical situation in this village is bad. They don't have water, good water. They have just one river. They bathe there. They go to toilets there. They don't have a toilet in this village. And so people die of malaria and typhoid. So I'm donating those drugs to the health center so they can have drugs there for a while.
Indeed, this is the only source of water in the community. The only borehole constructed for them stopped working a long time ago. So with no water and toilet, some of the pupils simply stay away from school sometimes.
Sometimes even us, we used to suffer, we used to shout before they can turn up. What I want to say to the government, please, they can help us, that they will give their support, or they will come and assist this community. Honestly, this community is needed help. During the campaign, they can enter here, say, when you elect them, they will come and bring borehole, whatsoever, and the people that they are graduate, they will give them work. At the end, we will not see anybody.
Conditions in communities like this are directly responsible for the high rate of out-of-school children in Nigeria. The pupils of the school are still managing to defy the odds and get an education no matter how poor. But if the fortunes of the school do not change over time, then Harvesters of Christ Primary School would eventually shut down, and its pupils will swell the number of out-of-school children in the country. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Abuja, Nigeria.
To Egypt now, where about 900 international publishers from over 50 countries are participating in the Cairo International Book Fair. This is the 51st edition. Yasser Hakim has more.
It's the largest book fair in the Middle East and North Africa. An average of more than 2 million people visit the fair every year. The area of the book fair this year has been enlarged to accommodate the increasing number of publishers and visitors.
This is my first time. My friends encouraged me to come. I'm not an avid reader, but when I came and saw the books and different varieties, I've decided to buy a number of books, and I'm excited to go home and read more.
The fair is much better than the previous years, especially when we moved to the larger venue. The attendance is very high and much more than expected, and the sales are at a good level.
Cultural events take place on the sidelines, including musical performances. Most popular are book signings, such as this one by Egyptian author Omar el-Benoubi. He's launching his new sports book called 100 Years of a Dream.
The philosophy behind the book is that it tells the story of the Egyptian football players who played professionally abroad in the last 100 years, from 1908 to 2008. It uncovers new information about their lives and careers, from Bekir and Hegazi, who used to play in England in 1908, through all legends until the current footballers.
About 50 countries and 900 publishing houses are participating this year. China is one of the countries participating in the book fair here in Cairo. There are several Chinese publications on display. However, what attracted most attention was the book Governance of China by President Xi Jinping. Though the book has been published in 2017, there is still high demand for it.
It's an excellent book that reflects the strategy behind the success story of China. It also shows us more about the Chinese diplomacy and cooperation, especially strong ties with Africa. It also sheds light on the Belt and Road Initiative and its importance.
The book fair runs for 2 weeks. It's an opportunity for Egyptians to open up to cultural diversities from around the world. Yas Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
And let's go to Uche now for your latest business news.
Thanks, Lindy. And coming up on Africa Live Biz. Zimbabwe's diamond mining company fails to meet its 2019 production targets. And European shares recover from the worst week in nearly 7 months.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Well, let's start off in Zimbabwe. The country's state-owned mining firm, Zimbabwe Consolidated Diamond Mining Company, has failed to meet its 2019 production targets of 3 million carats. Now, authorities continue to remain hopeful of a turnaround as the firm consolidates its investments to improve output this year. The firm says it is aiming to double the 1.6 million carats which it produced in 2019 through joint venture agreements and increased exploration. It also aims to mitigate viability challenges linked to power shortages and access to foreign currency. And to South Africa now, where this year's Mining Indaba conference has kicked off in Cape Town. The country's energy crisis is amongst the top issues being discussed at the event. South Africa, of course, is currently facing a significant power crisis, which has led to rolling blackouts and also affected mining operations. Now, the Department of Mineral Resources says mining companies have now been given the green light to be completely energy self-sufficient and build their own power generation units. It is a move that is seen as an attempt to shore up investor confidence in the country.
Companies are now going to be afforded with an opportunity to self-generate energy for themselves. I must also indicate that we have started some time ago with mining companies. 2 weeks ago, we had a meeting with BBC and Busa Business in South Africa and Black Business Council, where we deliberated on this matter of energy. And so mining companies are quite excited with the strategy that the minister has implemented.
Few of them have the balance sheet to do it, and they have the need to do it. But we've seen some very large mining companies here, it's too late. They were happy to do it 10, 15 years ago, but it's too late for them. Now they're just running their assets down and or selling their assets. So we got to get rid of this draconian legislation today, so that the few mining companies that do want to stay here and have strong balance sheets, they can show how quick, how well, how easy to build these power plants.
Let's turn our attention now to markets. European shares edged up on a Monday. That's following the worst week in nearly 7 months. This comes after the departure of Britain from the European Union. However, concerns continue to rise over the potential economic drop or the economic fallout from the coronavirus outbreak in China. The Pan-European Stock 600 index hovered around the flat line in early trade, with basic resources shedding about 1.1%, leading those losses. Blue chip British stocks did add about 0.3% after Britain officially left the EU. Now, this marked the end of years of financial and political turmoil over the exit. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is now set to negotiate a trade deal with the EU. He is expected to consider a revised agreement rather than follow rules which have been set by the European Union.
The DAX is dominated by two topics, Brexit and what will come next. The British will be tough in their negotiations with Brussels. The other topic is the coronavirus, which will probably keep us busy for a few more weeks. We first need to wait for the end of the incubation period and the height of the epidemic before things improve. Here at the stock exchange, everyone is thinking of Austria, because today the Austrian Chancellor is in Berlin, and we all hope that the financial transaction tax won't be introduced again because it's pointless. It hurts the pensions of millions of Germans. Those who introduce a financial transaction tax will be looking at increased poverty amongst pensioners, and no politician should do that.
And shifting focus now, business owners are navigating the complexities of maintaining operations following the coronavirus outbreak. Now, to ensure the smooth sailing of operations, hygiene and sanitation guidelines have now been put in place. CGTN reporter Omar Khan sat down with one foreign restaurant owner in the city of Guangzhou to hear his views on the situation and the importance of enforcing preventative measures.
Welcome to Bandidos. May I tell your temperature? Okay, please wash your hand, please.
It's not something you hear every day when arriving at your favorite restaurant, but in one of Guangzhou's top Mexican cantinas, all necessary precautions are being taken amid the coronavirus outbreak. For restaurant owner Rob Turnbull, it's not only about keeping customers safe, but also his staff.
Trying to get everyone masks, checking the temperature of everyone who comes in, having everyone wash their hands. We sterilize the whole restaurant a couple times a day just to, make them feel safe and comfortable. as much as the customers can.
When we took this footage on February 2nd, the province of Guangdong had 632 confirmed cases of the coronavirus, with 179 of those in Guangzhou. In this difficult time, misinformation has circulated on social media platforms, generating unnecessary hysteria, which Turnbull disagrees with and feels people shouldn't buy into.
Well, I mean, everyone should be proceeding with caution, but I don't see the cause of the hysteria. I feel like it's maybe a little overblown. The last couple of days, I've seen a little bit more optimism anyways. People are starting to get a little bit more open to going outside, and like there hasn't been any, let's say, shortage on water. Yeah, there was a bit of a run on veggies, but there's already, every Chinese New Year, difficulties in getting products like vegetables and fresh meat.
This Canadian entrepreneur has lived in China for nearly 2 decades and has raised his family in Guangzhou. He acknowledges the potential losses businesses will suffer over the next few months.
I think there's going to be it's going to be a really tough month for a lot of restaurants. Like, if this doesn't blow over soon, or if there doesn't start to be a lot more optimism in the market with people going out, like people who have places in malls, the malls are empty, zero, like no one in them really. So we're lucky with like a bit of a street front presence here. It's going to be really tough. I think there'll be a lot of places that close. It's just too tough.
Fortunately, Turnbull and his family haven't experienced any fallout from the epidemic. When asked if he has any plans to uproot and leave China, he says he won't.
Not really. There was a couple days at the beginning where I took a few extra precautions, stocked up on some water and some dry goods, I guess. But then like 2 or 3 days later, I was like, the logistics in China is amazing, right? Like that's one thing that's really done well here is logistics, and things are starting to kick back in. Now you can get fresh vegetables again. Water was never an issue. Obviously electricity, internet, all that stuff's still going strong. It's none of the things that would worry me have happened. So like if things got worse and worse and worse, they'd have to get quite a bit worse for me to want to go. My life is here, business is here, but I don't know. Families here.
Omar Khan, CGTN, Guangzhou.
Now, India's government has tabled its annual budget in Parliament amidst the country's worst economic slowdown in over a decade. The budget aims to revive growth and boost private consumption in the country, but the government is also trying not to worsen a fiscal deficit. Here's Neha Punia with more.
The Indian government is under pressure not just because of slowing growth at home, but because recently the IMF also blamed India for bringing down global growth as well. With the government desperate to turn the economy around, this budget focused on putting more money into the hands of people, creating more jobs and boosting India's farming sector, which still employs about half of its 1.3 billion people. The government also plans to spend nearly $40 billion for farmers over the next 1 year, giving them access to solar-run equipment, local storage units, and on setting up a railway and air transport system for fresh produce. Job creation is another priority, with unemployment in India at a 4-decade high. The government has proposed apprenticeship programs for graduates with urban local bodies. It's planning to spend $14 billion on the education sector in the long term as well, and also conduct a GMAT-like exam to woo Asian and African students to Indian universities. In the short term, however, the government is hoping that a 20% increase in capital expenditure on infrastructure projects will create more jobs. It's working on setting up 6,500 projects like highways, airports and ports. Reduced personal tax rates have also been welcomed by the common man, and the government's plan to sell its stake in state-run companies has been lauded by experts. But the challenge ahead for the government is stark. Its fiscal deficit is expected to touch 3.8% this year against the target of 3.3%, which means the government will have to raise sufficient funds to bankroll all of its commitments. And the government has also projected a nominal growth of 10% this year, but experts say that's an unrealistic target. Neha Punia, CGTN, New Delhi.
And heading to North Africa now, where an architect who has always been fascinated by ancient Egyptian art is now incorporating some of his concepts, or rather its concepts, in her work. CGTN's Adel El Mahoui with her story.
When an information security firm in Egypt was establishing its headquarters in Cairo,
They assigned an award-winning architect, Dalia Al-Saadani. Working to protect information in the digital world, little did the firm know that the building's design would be inspired by ancient civilization. When she started planning, this remarkable architect says she was amazed to discover how advanced the pharaohs were in information security.
As I studied history of architecture, one of the items that opened the door of similarities with information security is that there is a hierarchy in the design of temples. That is, the commoners are allowed in certain chambers, different than the noblemen, different than the higher priest. And that depends on the amount of information they see engraved on the walls.
With a team of computer scientists and Egyptologists assisting, the more she dug into her research, the clearer the concept became. Al-Saadani decided to turn this tech company into a bridge that connects the 21st century to the ancient Egyptian civilization some 7,000 years ago.
I saw it as a time machine, and that's where the concept of having walking in through the present, traveling through time to the past, and going up to the future. So we had 3 levels in that building. I started researching and working with Egyptologists as well as computer science specialists, and there were a lot of similarities to my surprise.
The result was a masterpiece of contemporary ancient Egyptian art. Now exceptionally designed, the firm decided to turn some parts of the building into a modern pharaonic museum.
I didn't want to copy Egyptian temples. I didn't want people to feel that they are yet in another pyramid or inside the temple. I wanted to make a concept which is a little bit modern. That's why I used metal. I used engravings with CNC machinery to give it a touch of contemporary look.
The precision of the sculptures, the meticulous finishing, and the color theme have been all brilliantly infused, giving breathtaking visuals. Every part of this place creates a feeling of connection. Ancient Egypt is no longer a culture far away in time. This museum and Dalia's other projects have won her 13 international awards in several subdivisions of architecture. Adil Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Well, that's all for now on Africa Live Biz, but later on Global Business Africa, we'll be delving further into the worsening power crisis in South Africa. Of course, all that coming up top of the hour. For now, back to you, Liz.
Thanks, Wuchem. Well, after the break, we'll head into the world of sports. Do stay with us. Coming up, Senegal see off Sierra Leone as they move one step closer to the FIFA Under-20 Women's World Cup.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference. How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. We start with football now. Senegal's women's under-20 team have progressed to the next qualification phase of the FIFA Women's Under-20 World Cup after playing out to a second-leg 0-0 draw against Sierra Leone in Dakar. The Lionesses of Teranga proceed to the next round after emerging 1-0 winners on aggregate. CGTN's Mohamed Abubakar has that report.
The Lionesses of Teranga came into this game leading 1-0 on aggregate after beating Sierra Leone by a solitary goal in the first leg. They just had to avoid defeat to guarantee progression to the next round of the 2020 FIFA Under-20 Women's World Cup qualifiers. Sierra Leone pushed hard to find the crucial away goal, but Senegal's resilience at the back proved key as the match ended goalless.
I'm so glad with how the match went on, and I'm really impressed because we played well against them. The team can do more in the future, and I believe we can continue putting more effort to advance to other stages.
I'm so glad because the match come off fine, and I'm really impressed because we play past them. Well, the team get more future, and I believe we go train and for we put more effort. For we will go another stage.
Senegal's win in the reverse fixture gave them a good cushion going into this match. That meant tactics had to change for both coaches in the second leg.
Senegal were determined, the girls were determined, and we did everything in the game. But it's just the lucky side, we get to draw.
I would like to congratulate the girls who made a great match, and I am very proud of these young players. I can also say that what worked in our favor was rigor, especially on the technical level. What made the difference during the meeting today was purely and simply the tactical plan. The girls followed my instructions and it worked.
The FIFA Under-20 Women's World Cup will be held in Costa Rica and Panama this year, and Africa will only have 2 spots in the competition. Mohamed Abubakar, CGTN.
Meanwhile, Tanzania progressed to the first round of the 2020 FIFA Women's Under-20 World Cup qualifiers after beating Uganda over 2 legs. Only 2 teams will represent Africa at the tournament in Costa Rica later this year. In the second leg preliminary round match played in Kampala, hosts Uganda took the lead early in the second half when Fiona Napumba slotted home from close range. But Tanzania, who carried a 2-1 aggregate lead from the first leg, responded quickly through Diane Msewa, who restored parity. Opa Clement then handed Tanzania the advantage with her well-taken free kick from over 30 yards out. A 2-1 win guaranteed progress for Tanzania, who will face Senegal in the next round.
As Tanzania, we have one plan and even a technical team that is together, that cuts across the youth, under 17, under 20, and the senior team. And this helps them to get a lot of confidence and experience.
Rugby news now. Former Springbok winger Tondarai Chevanga is in Kenya with a team of coaches from the Bobesi Pride Foundation holding rugby clinics at various schools in Nairobi. Tondarai, who now coaches the Zimbabwe national rugby team, has spoken highly of the current Kenya Sevens team and is confident the Shujaz of Kenya will put their poor 2019 campaign behind them this year.
When you think of sevens, you think of African seven sides. The first, apart from the Blitzburger, the first team that you think about is Kenya. I think they've managed to get their systems right. I think they've got a good mix of experience and the youth coming through. And really, I think any side that comes up against Kenya, they know that they're going to have a fight on their hands. They know that they're going to get physicality. They're going to get a lot of speed, and they're going to be tested the whole game. So. It's awesome to see how Kenya is done in this particular season, and it would be great to see them competing at that high level again.
Meanwhile, Kenya's Rugby Sevens team wrapped up their Sydney Sevens campaign on Sunday with a 12-19 loss to Samoa in the 15th place playoff, picking up 1 point from the 4th leg of the HSBC World Rugby Sevens Series. However, the Shujaz' dismal show in Sydney was preceded by 2 good outings in Hamilton and Cape Town, where they racked up 10 and 11 points respectively. The East African side, which is the only other African side in the World Rugby Sevens Series, is currently in 11th place, having secured a total of 26 points in the first 4 rounds. The 5th